From a crash on a Japanese highway, to a plane that ended up crashing straight into the ground, to a flight captured on camera, all these accidents have something in common. These routine flights, in seconds, turned into the worst nightmares for many people and were recorded by cameras, registering their horror. That's why in these videos, you'll see 5 aviation disasters that turned into terror in seconds, caught on camera. We'll begin with an accident involving a plane that crashed while landing on a highway, colliding with another aircraft and causing a large explosion. We're talking about Japan Airlines Flight 516. In just 7 minutes, one of the most shocking aviation accidents ever captured on camera would unfold on the runway of one of the world's busiest airports. In just 7 minutes, a routine domestic flight would collide with another aircraft, and the entire world would watch the flames rise. This is the story of Japan Airlines Flight 516, January 2nd, 2024. Japan Airlines Flight 516 is arriving at Tokyo Haneda Airport after a routine flight from Sapporo. The aircraft is an Airbus A350, carrying 379 people on board. The weather is clear, visibility is good. Inside the cockpit, the landing briefing is complete. The crew is calm. Nothing suggests what is about to happen. On the runway ahead, a Japan Coast Guard Dash 8 is positioned, its presence misunderstood in the chain of communications. Air traffic control clears Flight 516 to land. The A350 descends steadily toward the runway. At the same time, the Coast Guard aircraft is still on the runway. Its crew believes they have permission to enter and hold position. 2 aircraft, 1 runway, no visual contact. Passengers aboard the A350 look out the windows, unaware they are seconds away from disaster. The A350 touches down at normal speed. Then, impact. The nose of Flight 516 strikes the smaller aircraft. A massive explosion erupts instantly. Fire engulfs the underside of the plane. The cockpit fills with warnings and smoke. The aircraft continues sliding down the runway, burning. Inside the cabin, panic spreads, but the crew reacts immediately. The aircraft comes to a stop, fully engulfed in flames. Cabin crew shout commands. Evacuation slides deploy. Passengers escape through smoke and fire. Some jump directly into the darkness. Others run as the aircraft burns behind them. Cameras capture the inferno from every angle. All 379 passengers and crew survive, a near miracle. 5 of the 6 crew members on the Coast Guard aircraft are killed. The investigation reveals the cause: runway incursion, miscommunication with air traffic control, a fatal misunderstanding of clearance instructions. Japan Airlines Flight 516 became a global symbol, not only of catastrophe, but of how discipline, training, and calm under pressure saved hundreds of lives in the final minutes before everything was lost. But if you think this accident was horrific, the next one is even worse, because this one was captured on a driver's dash cam. We're talking about Transasia Airways Flight 235. In just 4 minutes, this aircraft would fall from the sky. In just 4 minutes, a routine flight over Taipei would turn into one of the most widely recorded aviation disasters in history. What makes this crash different is not only what happened, but how little time it took for everything to go wrong. This is the story of Transasia Airways Flight 235. January 4th, 2015. Flight 235 departs from Taipei Songshan Airport bound for Kinmen Island. The aircraft is an ATR 72-600, carrying 58 people. Weather conditions are normal, visibility is good, the takeoff is smooth, and nothing suggests danger. Inside the cockpit, procedures are routine. The aircraft begins its climb over a densely populated part of the city. At this moment, the flight is completely stable. Seconds after takeoff, the right engine loses power. Warnings activate immediately. The crew recognizes an engine failure, a scenario they are trained for. The aircraft is still flying, still controllable. But then, a critical mistake occurs. Instead of reducing power on the failed engine, the pilots pull back the throttle on the left engine, the only engine still working. The aircraft is now climbing with almost no usable thrust. Airspeed begins to decay rapidly. The stall warning sounds repeatedly. The pilots struggle to understand why the aircraft is losing lift. They attempt corrections, but each action worsens the situation. The plane banks left, dangerously low over the city. Dash cams and security cameras capture the aircraft wobbling through the air. At just a few hundred feet, the ATR stalls. The left wing strikes a bridge. The fuselage breaks apart. Flight 235 crashes into the Keelung River. There is no time left. Emergency crews arrive within minutes. Survivors are pulled from the river, some trapped inside the wreckage. Out of 58 people on board, 43 are killed. The investigation reveals the cause: a manageable engine failure, incorrect engine shutdown, loss of situational awareness under stress. A flyable aircraft was lost in less than 4 minutes. This was Transasia Airways Flight 235. And although this accident was chaotic, the next one crashed in the middle of the city, being filmed by many cameras. We are talking about Pakistan Airlines Flight 8303. In just 9 minutes, this aircraft would fall into a residential neighborhood. In just 9 minutes, a routine landing would turn into one of Pakistan's deadliest aviation disasters. People on the ground were already recording. No one knew they were about to capture the final moments of Pakistan International Airlines Flight 8303, May 22, 2020. Flight 8303 is approaching Jinnah International Airport in Karachi after a domestic flight from Lahore. The aircraft is an Airbus A320, carrying 99 people on board. Weather conditions are normal. The runway is clear. Inside the cockpit, the approach begins, but it is already unstable. The aircraft is too high and too fast. Air traffic control warns the crew. They acknowledge, but continue the approach anyway. The pilots descend aggressively, trying to salvage the approach. The aircraft exceeds safe descent parameters. Landing gear is not properly configured. Despite this, the crew continues. The plane touches down hard on the runway, with engines scraping the ground. The pilots initiate a go-around. What they don't realize is that both engines have already been damaged. As the aircraft climbs, engine power begins to fail. Moments later, both engines flame out. The cockpit turns silent, except for alarms. The pilots declare a Mayday. The aircraft is now gliding, losing altitude over the city. Passengers begin to realize something is terribly wrong. On the ground, people point their phones at the sky. With no engine power, the A320 descends between buildings. The pilots attempt to line up with the runway one last time. The aircraft clips rooftops. Then, impact. The plane crashes into a densely populated neighborhood. A fireball erupts between homes. The final moments are captured from multiple angles. 97 people are killed. Only 2 passengers survive. The investigation reveals the cause: an unstable approach, ignored warnings, improper landing configuration, loss of both engines after runway contact. The aircraft was flyable, the weather was clear, but a chain of poor decisions, minute by minute, sealed the fate of Pakistan International Airlines Flight 8303. But if you think this accident was chaotic, the next one was an accident that could have been avoided. But unfortunately, it scarred an entire nation. We're talking about the Fly Dubai Boeing 737 flight.
3:40 in the morning. The sky above Rostov-on-Don is pitch black, cloaked in storm clouds and battered by gusts of over 60 kilometers per hour. A Fly Dubai Boeing 737 with 62 people on board aligns with the runway. They've already tried once. It didn't work. They've spent more than 2 hours circling in the sky, waiting for the right moment to land. Now, they're going to try again. The plane begins its final descent. The wind shakes the fuselage. Visibility is near zero. Suddenly, a warning blares in the cockpit. Pull up! Pull up! And in an instant, the aircraft plunges nose first toward the ground at over 600 kilometers per hour. There was no time to react, no second chance. What happened to Fly Dubai Flight 981 wasn't a technical failure. It was a silent tragedy, built in the sky, minute by minute. What caused an experienced crew flying a perfectly functional aircraft to crash just meters from the runway after nearly 3 hours in the air? This is the story of the Fly Dubai Boeing 737 flight. Are you ready? Let's get started. On March 19, 2016, Fly Dubai Flight 981 took off from Dubai, headed to Rostov-on-Don, a city in southwestern Russia. It was a nighttime, low-cost flight with 62 people on board, 55 passengers and 7 crew members. At the controls, Captain Aristos Sokratus, an experienced pilot from Cyprus with over 5,700 flight hours. Beside him, First Officer Alejandro Oliva Cruz from Spain, young but well-trained and capable. Both men were familiar with this route. They had flown it many times before. The aircraft was a Boeing 737-800 in excellent condition, just 5 years old. Everything was routine: the flight plan, the departure, the onboard systems. But there was one threat they couldn't control: the weather at their destination. And from the very beginning, they knew this night wouldn't be easy. At 1:30 a.m., Fly Dubai 981 begins its final approach to Rostov-on-Don Airport. But from the cockpit, the view is disturbing. Strong crosswinds, heavy rain, and low clouds reduce visibility to almost zero. The runway appears and disappears, the aircraft shakes, landing gear is down, and just 340 meters above ground, the pilots decide to abort the landing. They perform what's called a go-around. In aviation, a go-around is not an emergency. It's a safe, even routine decision when landing conditions aren't stable. But here's the problem: the weather won't improve, and there are no nearby airports with better conditions. So Flight 981 climbs again and starts circling above Rostov, waiting. What no one knows yet is that this wait will mark the beginning of the end. Minutes after the go-around, Flight 981 remains in a holding pattern, circling above Rostov-on-Don. The wind doesn't let up. The rain keeps falling. Visibility stays near zero. Other aircraft make a different call. They divert to alternate airports, but Fly Dubai 981 keeps waiting. What initially seemed like a tactical decision soon turns into a psychological strain. The crew has now spent over 2 hours in the air with no clear outcome. Fatigue begins to set in, and here comes a silent enemy: exhaustion. Studies have shown that fatigue can reduce a pilot's reaction time as much as alcohol. After hours of nighttime flight, intense focus, and non-stop stress, the mind wears down, reflexes dull, judgment weakens. No one on board realizes it, but they are getting dangerously close to the moment when good decisions stop being made, and the worst is still ahead. But before continuing, if you like this video, please subscribe. It will help me a lot. 3:40 a.m. After nearly 3 hours in the air, the pilots of Flight 981 decide to try one more time. The second approach begins with careful maneuvers, but the wind is still fierce and visibility hasn't improved. At about 220 meters above ground, the aircraft begins to destabilize. It drifts slightly off course. The crew decides to abort the landing again. They initiate a go-around. The captain pushes the throttles to full power, but makes a fatal mistake. Unknowingly, he pulls back sharply on the controls, raising the nose far beyond what the aircraft can handle. The Boeing 737 pitches up aggressively, loses speed, and drops nose first. Within seconds, the aircraft transitions from climbing to falling, almost vertically. It hits the ground at over 600 kilometers per hour. The plane disintegrates on impact. There are no survivors. It all happened in less than 20 seconds. And in that brief window, there was no time to fix it, no time to even understand it. It was a moment, as brutal as it was irreversible.
The investigation after the crash found no technical faults in the aircraft, no maintenance issues, no system failures. The Boeing 737 was working perfectly. What happened that morning was a tragic case of human error, triggered by a silent mix of factors: extreme fatigue, growing tension, hostile weather, and a cockpit where, under pressure, decisions stopped being clear. In the final seconds, the captain correctly initiated a go-around, but performed the maneuver with excessive nose-up angle. The aircraft climbed too steeply, lost speed, and fell. Neither he nor his co-pilot had time to react. Investigators concluded that spatial disorientation also played a key role. In darkness, storm, and exhaustion, the brain can lose track of what's up and what's down. And when that happens 300 meters from the ground, the margin for error vanishes. Fly Dubai Flight 981 left a painful lesson that in aviation, the biggest threat isn't always mechanical. Sometimes, it lives in the tired mind of the person flying the plane. Today, a monument in Rostov-on-Don bears the names of the 62 souls who never came home. Because one night, circling over an impossible runway, the sky became their cage, and the earth their fate. And in that instant, everything changed forever. Finally, I want to share with you the latest plane crash that was captured on camera. The story of Asiana Airlines Flight 214. In just 7 minutes, this aircraft would strike the runway. In just 7 minutes, a routine approach would turn into one of the most widely recorded crashes in modern aviation. Hundreds of cameras were already watching. No one knew they were about to capture a disaster. This is the story of Asiana Airlines Flight 214, July 6, 2013. Flight 214 is arriving at San Francisco International Airport after a long flight from Seoul. The aircraft is a Boeing 777 carrying 307 people. Weather conditions are clear. Visibility is excellent. The runway is in full view. Inside the cockpit, the approach is being flown manually for training purposes. The pilots expect the aircraft's automation to manage airspeed automatically. But one assumption is wrong. As the plane descends, airspeed begins to slowly drop. The autothrottle is not actively maintaining speed, something the crew does not immediately notice. The aircraft is now flying below the proper approach speed. The descent continues, but energy is bleeding away. Inside the cockpit, no one calls out the decreasing speed clearly enough. The warning signs are subtle, but growing. The plane is now dangerously low and slow. The stall warning suddenly sounds. The pilots push the throttles forward, but it is too late. The Boeing 777 sinks below the glide path. Cameras capture the moment the tail strikes the seawall just short of the runway. The aircraft slams into the ground, spins, and breaks apart. Smoke and debris fill the air. Passengers are thrown violently. Some escape seconds before a fire erupts. Everything happens in less than 5 seconds. Emergency crews respond immediately. Passengers evacuate down slides as flames spread. 3 people are killed. Dozens are injured. The investigation concludes the cause was pilot error, caused by mismanaged automation, poor monitoring of airspeed, delayed corrective action. The aircraft was fully functional. The runway was clear. But a slow loss of awareness turned a normal landing into disaster. This was Asiana Airlines Flight 214.